Hello, everyone. This is Tim, and I have Alokov on the line, and we're going to talk about something that I was going to do a video about just with myself, but I was like, well, I got Alokov, and he wants to do a video with me, so this might as well be a good idea to bring him in. The video is going to basically be about running games for other GMs, and how, at least for me, I don't know, I get a little intimidated by that, and I kind of mentioned to Alokov that this might be part of his problem, where he gets kind of burned out with GMing, because I think, didn't you say, Alokov, that you run pretty much games for mostly GMs these days?
Yeah, I had my first gaming group was, well, none of us knew how to play, so we had, by definition, one GM, which was the guy who knew what the heck he was doing, and what all these dice meant and stuff. And since then, even then, everybody else started to learn to GM before me, so by the time I got around to trying to GM, everybody else had done it already, so it still kind of counted, although none of us had much experience to speak of. And since then, just through the only groups I've gotten are people that I randomly solicit from Skype, and they tend, through, I don't know, luck of the draw, have always been GMs, so.
I have had my share of bringing new players in, but there's a lot of GMs that I run for, and I don't know, I get intimidated. Because I know what I'm like as a player, and the thoughts that go through my head when I'm sitting there like, oh, you didn't do this right, or, like I said, I never say that stuff out loud, but I just always, when I'm sitting there GMing for, I think there's one game I ran for nothing but GMs. There's like 5 or 6 GMs sitting around the table, and I just felt like I was being judged the whole time.
Yeah, I did too, and I mean, I've had great GMs. I haven't had these judgmental douchebags who are like, who are actively saying anything or who are doing things to stir up the game or trying to hijack it. In fact, had people specifically say, because they know that this is a problem for me, that I get this anxiety stuff, and they'll go like, dude, it doesn't matter, we don't care, or we'll say, like, after I've done a game that I think sucks, or if I mention I thought this was bad, or if I say anything like that leads them to think that I didn't think I did a good job, they'll be like, oh wait, this was fun, this was whatever, and try and boost my ego and all that. But no matter how much I can logically think, they aren't trying to tear me down. I suppose because particularly as people I've played under or have seen do, or I know what their games are like, I'm constantly comparing my job to what they've done, and like, I'm not doing nearly as well as them, and therefore I think that they must notice that, because heck, they know better than me what their games are like. So
yeah, I think a lot of times I'm my own worst critic, or I think I put thoughts into their heads that they don't have. Because I've had a lot of people say, I really enjoyed myself, I had a lot of fun, but I don't know why. There's this one guy, his name's Dan, and he's at my gaming club, and I really enjoy his games. I think he's a really great game master, and every time he's a player in my game, I just get intimidated. I just think, oh man, he's very much like Ander. Then he crafts like really great NPCs, and they're all fleshed out and very intricate storylines. And sometimes I just don't think I do as well as he does. So when he sits down, I just get scared.
Yeah, I have never done this because I know it will happen. But if I ever did run a game for Ander, I would have that issue times 10. So yes, I understand that sort of. Not from first-hand experience, because I'm not stupid enough to try that, but...
But, like, for instance, Dan was the first GM that ever ran Dungeons & Dragons 3. It was actually 3rd edition, and then 3.5 later on down the road. And he kind of brought me back into fantasy RPGs, so I think that might be part of it, too. I had a little hiatus there for a while with, like, Magic and, Magic the Gathering and college and stuff like that, so...
Yeah, and that was kind of the way, too, with... I mean... I've had the whole group has rotated so much that only one guy is left from the original group, but my first Skype group that I got, obviously because it was the first one I'd had for like a year, was, I had that issue then when I was supposed to run a game for them, and because particularly because I was running World of Darkness, and that guy not only had brought me back into gaming, but had introduced me to World of Darkness. I knew it existed before. I'd listened to Darker Days and stuff, but I never played it. And so on some level, I felt like this was his setting, and I was playing in it and whatever. And so,
just basically
even more so than a normal game, I would, or just generic game, if I had been like running D&D for him, I was thinking, wait, I'm doing vampire, he did vampire for me, and so there was even more incentive to compare the two.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the anxiety comes with comparing your stuff or your game to games that you've played in the past, and especially with those GMs. Maybe that's it too. It's the GM that I have played under, and then when he plays in my game, I just think, I hope he enjoys himself. I'm always just afraid that he's not going to.
Yeah, and on the other hand, I found that, like people say with you, either they love you or they hate you as a player.
Yeah.
In my experience too, even though I stress out about it, having GMs there can be a good thing. Particularly, well, mainly it's because I have one guy who is like you, but is the guy who, instead of, and I don't know that you necessarily wreck games, but the problems people have with you is you take stuff off the rails. For me, because my issue was not having enough rails, it was brilliant. It's like, oh, you want to go do this crazy thing? Cool. Now I can spend the rest of the session dealing with this, and the other players will... And he was good about bringing other players into it, so it's like, I want to go do this. I'm bringing all the rest of the party with me and giving them stuff to do as part of that. Okay, now we have like 2 games of plot that you created for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I find that game masters that so some of them maybe just don't prep as much, or they just they don't believe in railroad tracks, so they just appreciate that style more. It's just a clashing of styles sometimes. That's all.
Yeah, in my case, I think sort of like Bold Orange mentioned when I did a video recently where I mentioned like I have this problem with combat where I view it as actively bad, and just because of like trauma from bad hack and slash games, that every time I think I encounter combat now, I think of it as hack and slash, or as like can easily become, or whatever. I associate the two, and I have that with railroading too, that I've played in really railroaded games, so I am hyper vigilant not to railroad. And with GMs, that's even worse because they are more likely to notice that.
That's true.
So if I am putting a plot on the table that even I know, I can point out the linearity of it or the plot hooks or whatever, and then I run it for GMs, they're even more likely to notice that.
You were saying that having GMs in a game can actually, it can be a good thing too, because a lot of times I've noticed when I run games for players that have never GM'd, they have a lot of, I don't know what you call it, like bad habits or just disruptive behavior that has nothing to do with gaming.
They are disrespectful through not understanding.
Yeah, and you'll find that GMs will, like when it's not their turn, they'll try to be a little bit more quieter, or if they do have to talk, they'll talk quieter, Like if they're talking about like a prestige class that they're going to take in 15 levels or something, they're going to do it really quietly or just wait till there's a break or everyone's going to the bathroom or something. So yeah, I guess it's a pro and con with running games for a bunch of GMs.
I did have that with my first group, the one group that didn't have all GMs in it, but that was just because they weren't nearly as interested in the hobby in general. It was more a social thing for them, and so I would be expecting to do a game, and they would go wander off and do other things not related to the game. That's not even table chatter. It's just go wander off and do other things. Or table chatter or whatever. So, yeah, I haven't had that much experience. When I think back on that group and why I hated it, it's like, oh yeah, that's exactly what was the problem.
I think this issue would probably even, like you were saying, it'd be really stressful to run a game for like Ander. But like if you wanted to like really stress yourself out, like do a little mental image here, like on the left you got like Webhead and then Ander and then the Gentleman Gamer and like Tetsubo and me or somebody else sitting around the table. Like, what do you think your thoughts are?
Oh, yeah, that's why I was thinking, like, this Planescape group, while it's my godsend group to play with, would be a hell to run for. Because you have Brady and the Gentleman and Ander, who are my 3 favorite GMs out of all of YouTube. But, like, if I could pick 3 people to run games for me, I would be them.
So I guess that's what I'm trying. Like, we'll do a little Dodinkin theory or whatever, where you got just like a thought process thing. What would you think? Like, what would your thought processes be if you had all these people around the table, and you're supposed to be running a game for them, like right now? Like, are you going to be like constantly comparing what you're doing to past videos that they've put out, things like that?
I definitely would. I would also be just knowing with Andrew, the major thing is I would know that I had not put as much effort and as much prep work into the world as he does, and I would assume that that is obvious, like because he puts like a year worth of work into stuff before he runs it, and I've never.
Yeah.
I want to eventually do that, but I can't just go. Like I mentioned in a comment on my recent video, that I cannot go from noob to Ander level in one jump. I have to have some experience before I can do that much, put that much detail and depth and believability into something.
Yeah, I've never spent a whole year prepping for
anything.
Yeah, anything, yeah.
Any kind of hobby thing.
Yeah, that is a long time. I think I've spent maybe like 2 or 3 months. That might be because normally when I'm prepping a game, it's because my group that I'm with is like, okay, what's going to be the next game? And that usually happens when, one game's starting to wind down and they're looking for the next player, the next GM to run something, or maybe the game I'm running is winding down, so I'm thinking, okay, once they do this, and a lot of times the game just sort of runs out when players lose interest. So it's like, oh, okay, well, this genre is, they're kind of getting jaded on this, so let me try something different, or, whatever.
Yeah, and I almost had that, because right after the session that I joined the Planescape group, the gentleman mentioned that he wanted to take a break from running it for a couple more weeks when we finished that story arc, and it was like, oh, crap. Now I'm going, because Andrew mentioned he wasn't ready to do anything, because he hasn't had a year to plan it, and so I thought, oh, crap, am I going to have to, like, a week after I join, I'm going to have to be ready to run stuff. Luckily, that didn't happen, but...
Well, like I said, you can always turn stuff down. It's like,
yeah, you can always turn stuff down, but I really didn't want that group to die, because, as I said, it's my dream group to play with, nightmare group to run for.
Yeah, I could see that being tough. Like, I guess I'll answer my own question. So if I was sitting at a table, and I had all the, the YouTube talking heads sitting around as players, I would be really, like, before I even said a word, I think I'd be trying to think about what words were going to come out of my mouth. Like, I'd be like, I don't know. I think I'd be really, like, almost like stage fright, I guess, is a good way to put it.
And that is what I have described it as, stage fright, where you're thinking of you, and that's why I mentioned, like, I freeze and stuff. It's very much like stage fright, like people, or like I at least do when I have to work on to do a timed exam or a timed essay, any timed creative thing. That same issue where you just freeze, and as soon as I'm out of that spotlight, I'm like, 50 million things I could have done, but now I can't, because the whole point is when I'm in the situation, that ability goes away.
Yeah, I think what would help me in that situation is maybe a session devoted to making characters,
That definitely does help. I have done that. I always do that. Is okay. Well, first of all, I ask them, what do you want me to run? Because if I'm running for GMs and I'm freaking out, it doesn't matter how excited I am about this setting stuff. I care much more about their excitement, because due to my sort of stage fright issues, they're going to have to carry the game more than other people would. And so I ask, what would you want me to run? And then when they pick something, unless it's something I totally hate, and I say, no, I'm not running that in a million years, or something really rules heavy, which is another level of stress that I don't need at that time, then I will ask about characters, and I will ask about, I will give a campaign, okay, what do you want out of the game, besides what you said in character creation, like, what themes do you want, what style of story do you want? Is there a particular area of the world that you want to deal with?
At the same time, I think like, this is the pros and cons thing. I think they'd be very interesting characters that would come out of a session like that. But then I'd be like, oh man, Like the characters are really cool, and I'm concerned that the characters are a lot cooler than what my game is.
Than my NPCs would be.
So
that is always that. That's why I mentioned that my one or two players who are spotlight stealers will end up running the game, basically, because I will provide them with NPCs to do what they're doing, but the NPCs are never that interesting. They are the guy you meet who is head of the guard garrison at the town, because you wanted to talk to him for some crazy reason. And then I only find out why later when they go, oh yeah, we want to hire you to, or we want to support you to become emperor or something. Like, what? Session 1 and you're already plotting to overthrow the emperor. Okay, cool. I don't even know who the emperor is, but cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I think something like that would be really interesting, like if I could actually pull it off. But
yeah. That's why I said that, that despite the fact that it scares me to death, running a game for Ander is on my bucket list, because it would be awesome. having seen him play a character and having heard great things about the games he runs and the worlds he creates and stuff, I'm sure he would be an awesome player to have, but not yet.
There might be some difference too about, like I was saying, like running games for GMs that you have played under, whereas like all the YouTube guys, I've never played under them. So in some ways,
but I would qualify them in the same category because I know so much about their style from the videos.
From their videos, yeah.
I feel like at least I know them well enough as someone I've played under once.
That makes sense.
And particularly if I played with them, like the Planescape group. I played under the Gentleman, and I played with Grady and Ander, plus I watched all their videos, so...
Yeah. I don't know.
And I specifically watched Anders' Mutants and Masterminds recap thing, which was sort of the closest you can get without actually playing under them.
That's true. So basically we've been talking about like the problems we have with it, but I don't know. Is there anything you think that we could do to?
Yeah, is there anything you can do other than just not do it? And go, no, you're a GM. Go away. I want to play again.
Yeah, I don't know. I think because I've done it before, so I'm trying to think what I was thinking at the time. I was at least in some ways I think it actually.
In my case, I'm almost addicted to it because I've done it so much that like. The one time I tried to run a game and I didn't have that crazy guy who was going to go try and overthrow the Emperor from Session 1 before I even knew what his name was, I was like, I have to have a lot more plot now and I'm not used to it.
Yeah.
So I find that, and like because they have upsides, you miss those upsides. The stress is basically replaced. Instead of the stress of them subconsciously picking apart your game, whether they're doing it or not, you think they are, and all that other stuff. It's the stress of not having those crutches, the crutch of they won't be dicks and try and screw up your plot. They make really interesting characters. They're really proactive and do things, or really get into the game. The scariest thing for me, actually, with someone like Andrew, is that he keeps like 50 pages of notes.
Yeah.
So I would be going, oh crap, I need to remember the name of every barmaid because he will.
Well, I've also noticed that GMs can be GM helpers in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
I've
heard about that from other people specifically who have done it more often and are more confident and stuff. They'll say, I actually really like that because they mentioned that on Fear the Boot several times that pretty much everyone on that podcast loves running games for people who are GMs because of all these things. They are going to screw up your plot through just not caring or intentionally screwing it up. And they're going to be okay with the spotlight not being on them at a certain time or another person getting their spotlight session or whatever.
The few times where I've run games for GMs that really like to help me out. They'll help me out with rules, or they'll make sure they'll keep everyone in line a little bit. Like, it kind of sucks to always be the guy that says, "Hey, can you guys stop talking about work? We're right in the middle of a combat," or "Hey, So it's kind of nice to have. I don't know. They're kind of like enforcers.
Yeah, they are. They are enforcers. And I have had all of these things at once because I have so many GMs in my group that I don't even have the shut up and stop talking about other stuff thing. I mean, we do pregame banter, but I don't have to be the enforcer of it because everybody there has been the enforcer of it at some point when they were running for non-GMs.
Yeah.
So it's easy to get off that, and all the others, like, all these things I'm so used to now that if I had to be the enforcer of preventing table chatter or something, it would be a whole lot more stressful than it normally would because I'm not used to it.
I guess so.
And that's kind of what I meant. Like, just like you said about your player skills kind of atrophy when you GM'd a lot. In my case, if you've GM'd for a lot of GMs, the skills that you learn for GMing for mostly players are going to go away because you don't need them anymore.
Yeah, I've brought a fair number of new players into the hobby, so I'm kind of used. I think I'm probably more used to running games for inexperienced players than I am for experienced ones.
That's what I was contrasting, is that I think I am in the minority in that I haven't done that, and I've mostly run games for GMs or really experienced people in general.
Now, probably the simple answer to this is don't stress. This is because a lot of this stuff we're talking about is going on inside, the GM's head.
Yeah, and that I've always known. It's like it's an irrational emotional thing, and if there's anything I hate about the human race, it's emotions and irrationality taking over and shutting down rational, logical thought.
Because, like I said, a lot of it's just going on in your head. It might not even be real. Like, you might be telling yourself, my favorite GM must be bored to tears over there, and really they're just taking it all in. They don't have to, like you said, they don't have to have that spotlight every second. Or if, and
if they do notice stuff, like if they do notice, oh, that's a plot hook, they aren't going to go, well, that sucks because I noticed it. They're going to expect that it's easier for them. Like a player, if they notice a dangling plot hook and it's so obvious, they're going to think, that sucks. But a GM's going to know, first of all, they're better at spotting those, and second of all, how hard it is to hide them.
Probably the one thing I've noticed with fellow GMs is that when they're playing, they love options. And again, this goes back to trying not to railroad stuff and having one way the campaign's going to go. They really appreciate when you throw out 5 or 6 different options out there on the table, and they get to choose which. But that's like any player. Any player loves to have lots of different options to take. But I don't know. I've just noticed the GMs in particular like that.
And they tend, because they're used to having so many balls to juggle, that they want to have, as running the entire world as GMs, that they want as players to not feel like they're doing 1/4 of the creative stuff that they would otherwise be doing.
And I always get the feeling, too, that a lot of these GMs have played in games with more inexperienced GMs, and it's nice for them to, I don't know. I always get the feeling that they expect railroading. They expect very limited options. So if you give them those options, they think, oh, okay, well, this isn't going to be another one of those games, so I can actually have a little bit more freedom and a little bit more control over my player's destiny, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of the thing with my one game that, and also if you do, like I said, they're better at spotting plot hooks and stuff. If you do manage to get something over on them, like you make them pick the red herring as the real plot or whatever, then they're going to love that. Yeah. Because they are so not expecting that.
That's very true.
It's the one time I managed to do that became a byword in my group now. And even when I brought the one guy over to another group, he still mentions that and uses that as like his catchphrase or whatever, because it was like the one time, I guess, that another GM was able to do that to him.
And another thing to say too is if one of those options is just really interesting, it doesn't matter that the GM can think, oh, okay, this is obviously one of my choices, but they'll be thinking that's a very interesting choice. So
I don't care that it's one of it is a choice that the GM is giving me. I care that it's cool. Also, if you manage to run, which was a benefit of me being caught off guard with like no plot, was when I did get provided with a crazy idea, and I'm sure the players were expecting me to just go, no, that's insane. Why the hell are you trying to do that? Instead, I ran with it, and that was why that campaign lasted so long, is because they were going, wow, this is cool. We would never get to do this in another game.
Yeah.
Just be able to go, I don't care that, because we were running a Roman game towards the end of the Empire, and so I guess they were expecting, like, the Empire is going to fall, we can't do anything about it, and came up with this elaborate plot of how we were going to recognize that the Rome's going to fall and prevent it, and instead of going, no, that is not part of the plot, even though I was internally going, ah! I decided, wow, that's really cool. I will let you do that. And that became the entire impetus for 6 months of game. And the reason that every time I would suggest quitting because it was stressful, it would go, no, 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 and, like, badger me into doing it more.
I think for just another suggestion for running games for GMs is try to do prep work. Try to do all your prep work, but try to do your prep work in such a way that it's flexible and I don't know that it can mold the prep work to the player's choices. I don't know. I mean, I know what I'm like as a player. I pick the choices that aren't as popular or maybe are more unexpected, and not all GMs that I run for are like that, but there's a good portion of us out there that are like that, I think.
Yeah, and I tend to know, unless it's a new group, I tend to know there's this guy who is like that, or multiple people that are like that, and so I will plan around that. But I would say that I try to, because I'm used to building plots this way, I try to think of it not in terms of what I expect the players to do, the path they are supposed to take, but what is happening, what the other people are trying to do. Like, the villain is trying to do this. I don't know or care how the players get involved with that. It's just, this is happening. And this is how they're going to, like, there's a corporation trying to do something evil, and they're going to see news stories about new technology that's coming out that's really scanning people's brains or mind control or whatever, but I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to have an NPC show up and say, they're doing mind control experiments, destroy their lab. I'm just going to throw in, you see an ad for this new machine or whatever on the TV, and if they go, I want to buy one of those or I want to try them, that's fine. If not, then eventually there will be stories of bad things happening to people who use these, or weird things happening.
Yeah,
and eventually they'll go, why are weird things happening, and dig up that all these people participated in this study or whatever.
There can definitely be consequences for things not done, and I think that's just a general tip, I guess, just to, if like the players don't do something, because they had more interesting options, that doesn't mean that those things that you included in the game don't continue to happen, So.
Yeah, and because I know that these GMs, because their GMs are more likely to be proactive, I can throw in stuff. I can throw in more passive plots or plots that I will expect to not be interacted with, because I expect that 90% of the stuff they do will be player initiated anyway. So I don't need to have have a bunch of hooks. I can have hooks in the background, and if they bite on one of them, that combined with what they initiate on their own can last an entire session, and then the other stuff can continue as it would have had they not done anything.
All right, well, we're working our way up to 30 minutes, so let me think here. Is there any final thoughts you want to throw out there? I guess just try not to stress, be flexible, do game prep,
and be aware that I think the biggest thing I have learned from this is none of my games that I run for them they have disliked, unless I screwed them up by just dropping the game partway through, or stressing out so much, or basically the only screw-ups that I have had have been when I just decided to not run the game, or that or ran out of ideas or whatever, all based on stress. So that's the major thing they've all mentioned is when you do anything, you do it well, but when you're freaking out, it doesn't work. So.
Yeah, just try not to freak out, and don't let your own
mind.
And
be aware that they aren't as critical as you think they are, and will enjoy things.
And I guess another thing too is that they enjoy being a player. So if
if they did
drop
not
the
enjoy being a
game,
player, if they were one of those people who was going to nitpick, then they would not have agreed to be a player.
yeah. So if you drop the game, then they don't get to play anymore.
Yeah,
So
which is why I got so many things where I went so many times where, like, from day one, I was expecting to drop that Roman game, and it lasted 6 months because every week I would be, oh, I'm done or I'm almost done, and then they would go, but this is so cool, and here are all the things that you've done that are cool, and why they're cool. And okay, I guess I'm confident enough I can do another week.
All right. Well, okay. I guess I think we covered that pretty well. So
Yeah, I think so.
all right. Thanks, Alokov, and thanks for watching, everyone.